Our love was a beautiful flower blooming in the barren land of prejudice, but it withered because it couldn't root deeper, unable to withstand the storms of our differences. Some loves are like a dream, so radiant you believe that if you just love deeply enough, all barriers will simply melt away. But then, life delivers a bitter lesson. It turns out that loving someone is one thing, but fitting just right into an entirely different world is a far crueler one. My name is Marcus, and I learned that some invisible boundaries, woven from tradition and expectation, are impossible to cross, no matter how hard you try. In the end, I didn't leave because I stopped loving her, but because the more we loved, the more we hurt. This is a story about love, culture, and the price paid when two worlds refuse to intertwine. I'm Marcus, 36, a software engineer in San Diego's tech industry. My life is pretty dynamic. I love new technologies, hiking the California hills, and quiet evenings with a good book. I grew up in a typical white American family, relaxed, free-spirited, not bound by strict rules or traditions. My parents always encouraged me to explore, to choose my own path, as long as I was happy and doing the right thing. For me, family was a place of unconditional love, acceptance, and personal freedom. Then, Aiko appeared. She was a Japanese-American woman, working in graphic design. From the moment we met at an art exhibition, I was captivated. Aiko possessed a beauty that was both modern and refined, blending the strength of a Western woman with the gentle, reserved nature of an Eastern soul. Her eyes were deep, her smile subtle, yet holding a strange intelligence and resolve. We quickly found a profound connection. Aiko loved my stories about work, and I was fascinated by her deep understanding of art and culture. We could spend hours talking about everything, from the latest movies to life philosophies. Our love began gently, with understanding, and profoundly, like a calm but powerful current, drawing me into an exciting new world. Every moment with Aiko, I felt like myself, completely embraced. She brought a peace I'd never known. I naively believed that love, if strong enough, would overcome all obstacles, that cultural differences would only add flavor to our relationship. I thought that as long as we loved each other, external factors like heritage, background, or family customs wouldn't matter. We'd build our own world, where love was the only foundation, where all differences would naturally blend. But I was wrong, a naive mistake. Yet it became the genesis of a series of tragedies I never foresaw. My family values comfort and shared joy. There are no rigid rules about how to eat, how to speak, or how to express emotions. But Aiko was different. She was the only daughter in a Japanese immigrant family that, even after several generations, maintained traditions with extreme strictness, almost to the point of being conservative. In her family, everything had rules, rituals, and absolute reverence for ancestors and elders. Each person's role, their limits, and expectations were always tied to the word must. Children must obey absolutely. Daughters must be capable and resourceful. Sons-in-law must show proper respect. They must understand rituals no one explicitly explains. They must know the obvious things only insiders truly grasp. Everything followed an invisible blueprint only those of the blood truly understood. I tried to learn. I read books about Japanese culture, about basic customs and practices. I wanted to show Aiko I was ready to enter her world, ready to learn and respect her roots. I believed my sincerity would be rewarded, that her family would see the love I had for Aiko and my willingness to assimilate. I told myself, if I just tried hard enough, every wall would fall. I researched how to properly use chopsticks, how to set dishes, how to perform a simple tea ceremony, things I thought would earn me points. I even watched documentaries about traditional Japanese family life, trying to grasp the nonverbal cues, the things considered self-evident in their culture. I put immense faith in my ability to understand them. But I didn't know that the world I was trying to step into wasn't as simple as what I found in books or on screen. It was built from unspoken emotions, silent expectations, and values so deeply ingrained in their very being that they couldn't be articulated, couldn't be memorized. It was a feeling, an instinct, a naturalness that I, an outsider, could never possess. Even Aiko, who had lived in both cultures, struggled to fully articulate those subtle nuances. I began my journey with the zeal of an explorer, unaware that I was entering a labyrinth with no exit, where every step could lead to a new misunderstanding, a fresh pain. The first time I visited Aiko's parents, I prepared as meticulously as if for a major exam, even more stressed than my most important work presentations. I asked Aiko countless questions about what to do and not to do, from what gift to bring, how to present it, to table manners during dinner. I tried to learn how to bow in the Japanese style, at the correct angle Aiko instructed. She explained that the bow wasn't just a physical act, but an expression of heartfelt respect. I brought a gift carefully wrapped in traditional washi paper, an exquisite ceramic tea set I thought was appropriate and showed my respect for their culture. I even spent that whole morning practicing a few simple Japanese phrases like hajime mashite, nice to meet you, and arigatou gozaimasu, thank you very much, trying to pronounce them as accurately as possible. As I stepped into their compact, meticulously tidy home in Little Tokyo, I felt an air of formality. So different from the casual, noisy familiarity of my own home. The scent of incense and green tea subtly perfumed the air. Aiko's father, Mr. Kenji, was a composed man with graying hair and sharp eyes that seemed to peer directly into my soul. Her mother, Mrs. Akemi, was a petite woman who exuded a dignified aura, with neatly tied back hair and an elegant kimono. They greeted me with a reserved politeness, a smile that barely showed teeth, and a slight bow. I responded with a deeper bow, just as Aiko had taught. During dinner, the atmosphere seemed thick, stiflingly tense. The dishes were exquisitely arranged, beautiful as works of art, but I felt too anxious to swallow. I tried to eat slowly, gently, to avoid making any noise. I fumbled with my chopsticks, trying to pick up small bites, afraid of dropping food or disrupting the table's order. Aiko's father, Mr. Kenji, suddenly spoke, his voice low but weighty, more like an interview question than a casual inquiry. Marcus-san, does your family follow any religion or rituals, like Shinto or Buddhism, or ancestor worship ceremonies? For example, I answered honestly, my voice a bit hesitant, because I'd never thought this question would be so important. No, sir. My family is quite open-minded about faith. We mainly focus on personal values, kindness to others, and freedom to choose our own beliefs. I don't follow any specific religion. Mr. Kenji was silent. He simply gave a nearly imperceptible nod, his gaze unchanged, then continued eating without another word to me for the rest of the meal. No questions about my work, my life, or anything personal. That silence was heavier than any criticism. It was like an unspoken conclusion, a judgment already delivered without any need for dialogue. I felt as if I had just failed an important test without knowing the grading rules, and the result had been permanently sealed. Her mother, Mrs. Akemi, delivered other subtle, yet equally sharp blows. When Aiko casually called me by a pet name like Honey or Babe during the meal, a natural habit for us, Mrs. Akemi immediately frowned, her eyes sharp as a knife. She turned to her daughter, her voice seemingly gentle but containing clear disapproval. Aiko, you are an adult. You should address people properly, and so should Marcus-san. At the dinner table, we need to maintain decorum. I forced a smile, a strained one to ease the tension. It's fine, Auntie, you can just call me Marcus, I said, trying to be as polite as possible but utterly confused. Mrs. Akemi merely sniffed softly, as if I'd just said something foolish, a thoughtless act. The whole evening, I felt like I was sitting on pins and needles, every action, every word scrutinized, judged, and seemingly never just right by their standards. I understood that the conformity they sought wasn't just external behavior, but something much deeper, a fundamental resonance of origin, of mindset, that I could never truly acquire. It was an acceptance from the bones, an understanding that needed no words. I left Aiko's house that night with a weariness I'd never known, an unnamed ache. I loved Aiko. I still loved her deeply, but I began to feel an invisible burden pressing down on me. This wasn't just about winning over a difficult family. It was about trying to become someone I wasn't, someone perfect according to a rulebook I didn't understand, a stranger in my own skin. I wondered if I could ever overcome this invisible wall, or if this would forever be an endless trial. That anxiety seeped into my every dream, every thought. After we married, the pressure from Aiko's family didn't lessen. It became more constant, seeping into every corner of our married life. Even the smallest daily habits. Aiko, with all her love and patience, tried her best to be a bridge between our two worlds, between me and her family. She was like a tireless interpreter, not just of language but of culture, of unspoken emotions and expectations. She explained customs, subtle hints, and hidden gestures that I could never have understood without her. She reminded me of memorial days, traditional festivals, rules of etiquette around elders, even how to sit on a tatami mat, how to serve tea, and how to fold napkins. But the traditional holidays of Aiko's family were always a difficult challenge for me. A play where I was forever an awkward supporting actor, forgetting my lines, missing the deep meaning of every word and gesture. I always felt out of place, like an outsider trying to join a dance where I didn't know the music, the steps, or the profound meaning of each movement. I didn't know when to bow when greeting elders, where to sit at the dinner table to show maximum respect, or what to say to avoid offending anyone in conversations full of veiled meanings. There were times I unintentionally did something improper by their standards. For example, I might casually shake an elder's hand instead of bowing deeply, or laugh too loudly in a solemn space when everyone else was silent, especially during memorial ceremonies. I noticed their glances not anger or annoyance, but deep disappointment, a helplessness as they saw an outsider who couldn't grasp their core values. No matter how hard he tried, those eyes seemed to say, "He's so naive," or "He'll never understand." It wasn't just a cultural difference, but a spiritual one. And if I forgot a Memorial Day, an important event on Aiko's family's lunar calendar, the consequences fell squarely on her, like an invisible burden she had to bear. I remember vividly one Sunday morning, when Aiko received a call from her mother. I was reading the newspaper in the kitchen, vaguely hearing Mrs. Akemi's voice on the phone, growing increasingly high-pitched and full of self-pity, almost reproachful, hinting at my lack of respect. When Aiko hung up, her face was pale, her eyes red-rimmed, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Mom cried," she whispered, her voice choked. "She said you don't respect our ancestors. You forgot grandfather's Memorial Day, the day we must go to the temple to pray and offer incense." I felt utterly bewildered and guilty. I had tried to remember everything, noted it in my digital calendar, set alarms. But the lunar calendar, these traditional holidays I'd never experienced growing up, were truly difficult to grasp and internalize. "I'm so sorry, Aiko. I truly didn't mean to. I just forgot. You should have reminded me one more time," I said, trying to soothe her, taking her trembling hand. But Aiko shook her head, tears still falling, her eyes looking at me like a stranger, someone from another planet. "If I have to remind you every little thing, if I have to explain everything from start to finish, what to prepare, what to wear, what to say, then what's natural about it? Marcus, you don't understand. You don't understand that these things are ingrained in my very being. They're not something you can learn from a book. They're a part of who I am. My breath, the current in my veins. You can try, but it will never be your instinct. And that makes my family, especially my mother, disappointed, feeling like I chose the wrong person." That statement, "You don't understand," felt like a needle piercing my heart, tearing through all my efforts. I understood. I understood she was talking about an invisible understanding, a natural cultural harmony I couldn't achieve. I understood that the more I tried to learn, the more I tried to conform, the more I exposed my unnaturalness, an unbridgeable difference. Aiko began to feel trapped between two worlds. On one side, her family with their deep traditions and unspoken expectations, and on the other, me, the husband she loved, yet who symbolized a different world, free and lacking the constraints she grew up with. I saw her growing more tired, thinner, her face more drawn. Her smiles became rarer, replaced by heavy sighs, distant, troubled gazes, as if she was searching for an escape she couldn't find, a door to free herself from this torment. She tried to make me understand, but it seemed, each time she tried to teach me about her culture, she felt like she was betraying her own essence, or alienating me further, causing our relationship to crack even more. She became more irritable. Our conversations dwindled, leaving only an uncomfortable silence. We both knew an invisible void was growing between us. I also felt exhausted, not just physically but mentally, spiritually. Exhausted from trying to be someone I wasn't, tired of the veiled comments, the judging eyes, and the feeling of never being just right. I wanted to ask Aiko, "Do you think we're trying to force two puzzle pieces that don't fit together? Should we just give up this fight?" But I didn't dare. I was afraid of hurting her, afraid of adding to her burden. So I kept the pain, the deadlock, to myself, letting it gnaw at me bit by bit, pushing me further from Aiko. Even though the love was still there, we slept in the same bed, but lived in two separate worlds, thousands of miles apart in spirit. I remembered our evenings before, holding hands on the sofa, talking about everything. Now, those moments felt distant, like a beautiful dream long past. The differences weren't just in rituals or words, they seeped into the smallest daily habits, things I never thought could cause a rift. I liked to eat casually, without much formality, sometimes even sitting on the floor to watch TV or snack. Aiko always maintained decorum, tidiness, from how she ate to how she arranged things. Every time I casually left things messy on the table or threw unwashed clothes on a chair, she'd sigh and quietly tidy up herself, not saying a word. But I felt her disappointment, her helplessness at living with someone not quite right. I wanted to help, to change, but it seemed my ingrained habits were too hard to completely break. I'd try, then forget. And each time, the distance between us grew a little more, like tiny cracks slowly spreading across a pane of glass. Cultural conflicts also showed in how we expressed affection. I'm an open person. I like to hug, to express love with words. Aiko, though she loved me, was more reserved, especially in front of others. Sometimes, my sudden hug in public would embarrass her, and I felt the discomfort in her eyes. I understood it was due to culture, but sometimes, I felt like I was being rejected, pushed away even in our most intimate moments. Small misunderstandings piled up, slowly eroding the connection between us. I had loved Aiko with all I had, but it seemed all I had didn't include what her family, and deep down, she herself, truly needed. The simmering tensions grew over time, accumulating into an enormous pressure crushing our relationship, like a ticking time bomb. We no longer had romantic dates, endless late-night conversations about dreams and futures. Instead, there were quiet evenings, each of us lost in our own thoughts, scrolling on our phones or watching TV, or fiery arguments about the smallest things, which were really irreconcilable. Cultural clashes turned into bitter words. One evening, we were eating dinner in a terrifyingly familiar silence. Only the clinking of cutlery and my heavy sighs broke the quiet. The air felt thick, so heavy I found it hard to breathe. Aiko suddenly looked up, her eyes holding a deep sadness I'd never seen, a sorrow laden with accumulated exhaustion and despair. My heart clenched, as if someone was squeezing it. She put down her chopsticks, her thin hands clasped together, fingers gently rubbing as if seeking strength. Her voice was soft but heavy, like a thunderclap shattering the fake silence, and also shattering my last shred of hope. Marcus, do you regret marrying me? That question, though barely a whisper, echoed in my mind like a death knell. I never did. Honestly, no matter how great the pressure from her family, no matter how out of place I felt, I never regretted marrying Aiko. I loved her. A genuine and profound love. A love I had once believed could overcome anything. I had poured my heart and soul into this relationship, striving to overcome my own limits, but I also never thought that loving each other wasn't enough. I never thought that, no matter how much two people loved each other, they could be separated by unspoken things, by invisible boundaries, by unseen bonds stronger than steel, by bloodlines and beliefs deeply ingrained in the subconscious. Aiko's question opened a wound in our hearts that we had both tried to hide for so long, a secret of silent deadlock. After that question, we began to argue. No longer minor disagreements, but fierce confrontations about the most fundamental aspects of life: how we wanted to build a family, how we wanted to raise children, how we wanted to live a full and meaningful life without internal conflict. Aiko, deeply influenced by her family, wanted to send our child to summer school in Japan from an early age, from 5 or 6, so they could absorb the culture, traditions, and language early on. She wanted our child to grow up with absolute respect for their roots, with an understanding of rituals and family values. She believed it was the only way for our child not to lose their identity, not to suffer the same cultural tug-of-war as she did. Our child must know their origins. Marcus, she had said, her voice resolute. That's our responsibility. I wanted our child to be free to choose, to explore this vast world without being bound by family prejudices or expectations. I wanted our child to be independent, to develop in their own way, not according to anyone's must. Our child is still young. Aiko, I pleaded. I want them to choose their own path, not be forced into a predetermined one from birth. Let them grow, and they'll decide for themselves. She wanted to organize another wedding ceremony in Japan according to traditional rituals, a multi-day, complex, and expensive event requiring the participation of the entire extended family, to please her parents and relatives. I felt we had done enough. We had a cozy wedding in San Diego, blessed by friends and loved ones. I felt that one wedding was enough to express our love. We're already married, Aiko, I said, my voice full of helplessness. A wedding is just a formality. What matters is our love. Besides, it will be very expensive and time-consuming, and both our jobs are very busy. We could use that money for something more meaningful in our lives. Every time I said, but we live in America. Aiko, our child will grow up in America. We can teach them about Japanese culture here without being so rigid. Aiko looked at me as if I had denied her very being, negated her roots and the blood flowing in her veins. Her eyes were filled with hurt, as if I was asking her to abandon a vital, inseparable part of herself. You don't understand, Marcus. It's not just about where we live. It's about who I am, what I believe in. I want our child to understand that too. I want our child not to feel lost between two worlds like I do. We talked, argued, then fell silent again. Our conversations were no longer sharing, but confrontations about values, about worldviews, about irreconcilable differences. I felt Aiko sinking deeper into her family's world, and I was being pushed further away. These arguments had no winners or losers, only two souls growing more tired, more distant within their own relationship, exhausted from trying to do the impossible. I looked at Aiko, the woman I loved, but I felt as if she was drifting away, taking a piece of my heart with her. I tried to hold on, but what I touched was only emptiness, invisible walls growing thicker and unbreakable. One evening, as we lay beside each other in bed, I felt the distance between us was wider than any ocean. I tried to touch Aiko's hand, but she suddenly pulled away, as if by instinct. How are you feeling? Aiko, I asked, my voice soft, almost a whisper, carrying all my fear and hope. Are you happy? Can we find a way? She was silent for a long moment, then just shook her head slightly, tears beginning to roll down her pillow again. I don't know anymore. Marcus, I just feel so tired of having to choose. That answer was more painful than any reproach. It told me that we were slowly losing each other, not because love had died, but because we couldn't find a shared path to walk together. The secret of this breakdown was revealed, not by words, but by a desperate shake of the head. I tried one more time to understand, to accept. I attended more traditional ceremonies with her family, trying to learn how to behave more properly. I even enrolled in an intensive Japanese language class, hoping that understanding the language would help me grasp some of the deeper, unstated values. I tried my best to overcome the invisible barriers, to prove that my love was strong enough to erase all differences. I wanted to show Aiko's family that I was worthy, that I could become a part of them. I remember one Obon festival, the Japanese equivalent of a Buddhist All Souls Day, that I attended with Aiko's family. I tried to learn the traditional songs, the simple Bonodori dance. I saw Aiko smile when I awkwardly tried to imitate the movements, but then I overheard Mrs. Akemi whisper to an aunt, "He tries, but you can tell it's not natural. These things need to be absorbed from childhood." Those words, though not directly aimed at me, stuck in my mind, reminding me that no matter how hard I tried, I would always be an imitator, never truly belonging. Every effort I made, instead of bridging the gap, only further highlighted the unfillable difference. Each time I tried to please one side, either trying to live by Aiko's family's ways or trying to maintain my own freedom, I felt like I was hurting the other side, or losing a part of myself. I was like a rope pulled taut from two ends, and I knew, eventually, it would snap. We increasingly lived in a state of constant tension, exhausted and drained from trying to do the impossible. Finally, we decided to seek marriage counseling, sitting in the small room with the therapist, watching Aiko and I recount our story. I felt an immense sorrow. We were both so tired. And the raw truth was laid bare. The therapist was a middle-aged woman, with understanding eyes and a calm voice. She listened to us without judgment. Then she said something that jolted me awake, yet was full of poignant truth, a harsh reality we had tried to avoid. You're not arguing about who is right or wrong. You're not arguing because you've stopped loving each other. Your love is still very strong, but you are living in two completely different worlds, two entirely different value systems, and neither of you can fully blend without sacrificing a core part of yourselves. Marcus, you are trying to become someone you are not, and Aiko, you are having to choose between your roots and the person you love. That internal conflict is killing both of you and this relationship. You are trying to fit a square peg into a round hole. That statement felt like a knife piercing my heart, but also a release. It explained everything we were going through. We weren't enemies. We were just two people deeply in love, but separated by invisible walls that were too great. Ultimately, Aiko made the decision. She was the one who left. One weekend afternoon, she told me she would move back in with her mother for a while. I still clearly remember that afternoon, helping her pack her belongings, her things, our mementos of love carefully boxed. Our apartment, once filled with laughter and dreams, was now left with only heavy silence, a heartbreaking emptiness. Aiko turned back, her eyes still red-rimmed, but her face showed a strange relief, as if a huge burden had been lifted. "I still love you, Marcus. You know that," she said, her voice choked, trembling, yet full of resolve. "But I'm too tired. I'm tired of feeling guilty towards you every time I try to uphold tradition, to keep the family values ingrained in my very being, feeling like I'm pushing you away, betraying our love. I'm tired of having to explain, to fight for things that are self-evident, like breathing. To me, I can't keep feeling torn in two anymore. I can't live forever in this conflict. I need to find myself again." I understood, because I was tired too. Tired of feeling disrespectful, not good enough, not right enough for her family, and seemingly even for Aiko herself. Every time I chose to follow my instincts, my personal freedom, the way of life I grew up with, I was tired of trying to be someone I wasn't, a stranger in my own home, an actor who didn't understand the script. I couldn't bear that feeling anymore. We didn't divorce because we stopped loving each other. We divorced because the more we loved, the more we hurt, the more we tried to connect, the more we realized the profound, irreconcilable differences. We couldn't force two disparate currents to merge into one without losing their essence. I accepted that truth, a painful but necessary one. I accepted that some boundaries, though invisible, are stronger than any stone wall, and some loves, no matter how beautiful, simply cannot overcome them. We couldn't keep trying to change each other's fundamental nature, or what was so deeply rooted. My life after that became quieter, but also full of emptiness. I lived alone in the apartment, and sometimes I still wondered if I had done something wrong, if there was another way we could have made it through. But then, I'd remember the therapist's words. We weren't wrong. We just didn't belong together in a way that two worlds could truly harmonize. I still remember Aiko, her smile, the evenings we talked for hours, even her clumsy efforts to make me understand. But I also knew that chapter was closed. A big lesson in acceptance and letting go. I learned that some battles can't be won, and sometimes, retreating is the only way to protect yourself and those you love from further pain. Perhaps that was our destiny. We met, we fell in love, but we were born into two vastly different worlds. Our love was a beautiful flower blooming in the barren land of prejudice, but then it withered because it couldn't root deeper, couldn't withstand the storms of difference. I blame no one. I just know that I tried my best, and perhaps Aiko did too. Loving someone is learning their language, not just words, but values, beliefs, traditions, the silent things passed down through generations, etched deep into one's soul. It's how they see the world, how they express affection, how they live, and how they die. But if both don't learn and teach together, if one side tries to adapt while the other assumes a lack of understanding is disrespect, if one side constantly has to sacrifice themselves to fit in, then eventually, each person will be left alone in the world they were born into without each other, and perhaps even losing themselves in the process, leaving behind scars that may never heal. My relationship with Aiko is a painful testament to the fact that love, no matter how intense, cannot be the answer to every problem. There are invisible debts, not of money, but of understanding, of unconditional acceptance of roots, of identity. It's the debt of having to be just right in the eyes of a family, a culture you don't belong to. And when you can't pay that debt, when you can't be just right in their eyes, then the relationship will shatter, leaving indelible scars, a lingering ache that follows you throughout your life. Sometimes, letting go isn't because you've stopped loving, it's because you realize that holding on only causes both of you more pain, more exhaustion in an endless battle. It's the greatest sacrifice, letting go of your own happiness so the other person can live fully as themselves. This is my story. A hard-learned lesson about the clash of cultures and family expectations, about the price of not belonging. After the last sentence of the story above, this is my story. A hard-learned lesson about the clash of cultures and family expectations, about the price of not belonging. Slight pause or visual transition. Maybe you appear directly on screen. This story of Marcus and Aiko really highlights how powerful cultural differences can be, even in the strongest relationships. It makes you think, doesn't it? I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Have you ever experienced a similar cultural clash in your life or in a relationship? What did you learn from it? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one. If this story resonated with you and you found it meaningful, please give this video a thumbs up and share it with someone who might need to hear this message. And if you want to hear more powerful, real-life stories like this one, make sure you subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell so you don't miss anything. Thank you so much for listening. I appreciate you taking the time. See you in the next video.